Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're getting into something really key for keeping projects on track. It's all about how teams react once they've actually spotted potential risks. Having that solid plan for the what ifs.
Those things that can really throw a wrench in the works.
Exactly. And we're pulling some great insights for this from the book Project Management for Project Managers by Orlando Casaban. So, okay, risks identified, analyzed. What's the next step?
Right. Once you've got a handle on the threats, choosing, well, the right response strategy is crucial. There are basically four main paths you can take. You can try to avoid the risk, reduce its likelihood or impact, transfer it to someone else, or just accept it and be ready.
Four options: avoid, reduce, transfer, accept.
Yeah, and having a system, a thought process for this, that's often what makes the difference between smooth sailing and, well, hitting major problems.
Okay, let's unpack those. Starting with reduce. What does that actually involve? Can you give some examples?
Sure. So reduce is all about minimizing. You're either trying to make the risk less likely to happen, or if it does happen, you want to lessen the blow. Think about maybe bringing in an external company if your team's stretched thin. That helps with resource availability, right? So it reduces the risk of missing deadlines.
Okay, so beefing up resources. That makes sense.
Mm.
What else?
Another big one is really digging into the project's scope, like examining what's really necessary versus nice to haves. Sometimes you can cut out elements that add complexity. And, less complexity usually means less risk.
Simplifying things, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Or breaking a really large project down into smaller, more manageable chunks. Each mini project is inherently less risky than the whole giant thing.
Right. Easier to handle piece by piece.
And one more, getting a specialist to review your work breakdown structure. Like an expert eye early on can catch planning mistakes before they snowball. That definitely reduces risk.
So reduce is about actively doing things to lessen the risk's probability or its potential damage, making the project itself stronger or leaner.
You got it.
Now, what if the team decides, you know what, we don't want to deal with this risk at all? That sounds like the next one. Transfer.
Precisely. Transfer means you're essentially shifting the risk and usually the financial consequences onto a third party.
Like handing it off.
Yeah. The classic example is a fixed price contract with a supplier or subcontractor. You agree on the price up front. If their costs go up, well, that risk is theirs, not yours, because the price was fixed.
Okay. So you lock in your costs and they take the gamble on overruns. Smart. Any other ways to transfer?
Insurance, obviously. That's a very direct way. You pay a premium, and the insurance company agrees to cover the financial loss if a specific negative event happens.
Right. Fire, theft, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And sometimes the lines blur a little. Like, say you put a cost ceiling in a subcontract. You might think you're reducing your exposure.
But you're
actually transferring the risk above that ceiling to the subcontractor. It becomes part of the contractual agreement. So it fits better under transfer because you're contractually moving that financial responsibility.
That's a subtle but important difference. Reduce changes the risk itself. Transfer changes who holds it. Okay. What about the last one? When you can't avoid, reduce, or transfer. So what's accept?
Well, sometimes you just have to acknowledge that a risk exists and, live with the possibility. Accept means recognizing it and preparing to react if it actually occurs. This usually involves having contingency plans ready.
Plan B.
Exactly. So maybe you're launching a new IT system, things could go wrong during commissioning. So you work out a detailed emergency plan. You're accepting the risk of issues, but you're prepared to manage the disruption quickly.
So you're ready to jump into action.
Right. Or another example, if your project site is in an area prone to flooding, you can't stop the rain, right?
Nope.
So you accept the risk and develop a contingency plan for what to do if flooding happens, how to protect equipment, manage delays, etc.
It's about preparedness then. Not prevention, but readiness. It really sounds like picking the right strategy from these four is pretty critical.
Oh, absolutely. It's not one size fits all. The best choice really depends on the specifics of the project, the organization's tolerance for risk, and frankly, the resources you have. And like we touched on with the cost ceiling example, correctly identifying which strategy you're using helps ensure you're actually tackling the risk effectively.
Okay, so summing it up, understanding whether to avoid, reduce, transfer, or accept a risk is fundamental. Matching the strategy to the specific risk is where effective project management really shines.
Couldn't agree more.
For anyone listening who wants to dive deeper into this and really get a solid grasp on these strategies and other core project management ideas, I definitely recommend the book Project Management for Project Managers by Orlando Casaban. A really useful resource.
Very practical.
And maybe a final thought for you listening. How does knowing about these different risk responses, avoid, reduce, transfer, accept, make you think differently about challenges? Maybe not just in big projects, but even in your day-to-day decisions. Something to chew on. Well,